Hi, Blogging Heads viewers. This is Daniel Strauss of Woodruff and Strauss and Talking Points Memo, and I'm here with my co-host Betsy Woodruff of Slate Magazine, and we're here for another episode tonight. But we're going to do a little something different. We are taking topics from the audience and Twitter followers in particular. So that's what we're going to be talking about for most of this episode. We're going to hit a few other topics outside of that, but that's mainly it, and partially because we were so blown away with the snap topics that we got from posting and asking in about 5 or 10 minutes. So here we go. The first one we're getting is from David Cleon on Uber, and over the last 48 hours, there's been a lot of coverage of Uber, from a story about a supposedly off-the-record meeting that Ben Smith sort of wrote about, Ben Smith of BuzzFeed, where he highlighted that Uber seems to be tracking some folks, and there's something called God View in there, where sort of the highest level, my understanding is that the highest level Uber executives can monitor a specific individual users' ratings and track an individual on there. There's been a lot lately about how Uber has sort of taken moves to kind of intimidate or push back on journalists in some cases. And the snap response I had to this, I don't know about you, Betsy, was actually from a previous Blogging Heads episode that I did with Kevin Roos, where he said it's not really unusual in the tech and business world to have, if, there's been bad coverage about a company, for the CEO of that company to have some of his employees or something kind of keep a close eye or try and learn more about the journalist in question. And thank God we don't have a lot of that in political reporting, or hasn't happened to me yet. What do you think about this? What do you think about all the Uber coverage lately?
I think Kevin's point is very well taken, and I don't want to sound conspiracy theory-ish or anything, but my guess would be that this could theoretically happen in political journalism more often than we think. And I think the best example is Benny Johnson from BuzzFeed, who got fired after the plagiarism story broke. And your publication did a really interesting interview with the two anonymous Twitter accounts that had gone through his reporting kind of with a fine-tooth comb, looked through all these tiny minutiae, and found a number of instances that were obviously quite questionable. And I think one of the things that those guys said was that part of the reason they were interested in going through his writing was primarily because he expressed a conservative bent. Wrote things that were positive about Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and that made them more interested in combing through his material. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think journalists should welcome any and all scrutiny, but it's certainly something that caught my eye. Now, as far as whether or not publications target reporters for their political views and go out of their way to sort of hunt them down and hurt their careers. On the one hand, I know. So here's what I think about that, right? On the one hand, that's terrible, and that makes you a bad person. And if you're a tech guy and you invest $1 million in hunting down journalism and trying to hurt them, screw you, you suck. On the other hand, as journalists, we profit in digging up dirt on people and scrutinizing them and turning the public eye on them. And I think it can be hypocritical for reporters to say that they don't want that same scrutiny turned on them. Now, in the Uber case with Sarah Lacy, it obviously seemed to go way beyond the pale. And the problem there is that the guy seemed to be intimating that he would target her because of one night stands or something. We don't even know if that was happening. The guy seemed to be focusing on her for that, which I don't think journalists would do to politicians unless the politician was married or something. So, look, there's clearly issues there. But I think the general principle of reporters facing scrutiny, you can only complain about that so much.
There are just some basic things you should know, and I would never do as a reporter. I guess I kind of I personally, a little bit, and maybe this is paranoid, but I try and craft every email with the assumption that one day it'll be hacked.
Yeah.
At least on my professional account, like one day someone will comb through it and try and like respond to them.
Hmm.
So, my personal account a little less, and I should probably work on that.
And
But
I think you have to do that because given how technology works, it's a
the internet is written in permanent ink, man.
right. Given the fact that privacy is always in scare quotes, anything you put on the internet, like there's a very decent chance that eventually it's gonna show up in publication. So
One of my favorite journalists, Mina Kimes, who's at ESPN right now, and I hope we have her on the show one day, tweeted this really funny thing in response to the Uber stuff. She said, like, it's, I'm quitting Uber now, looks outside next week because it's cold. And it was funny, and, I got the point, but, like, there are two things about this, and the reaction has been a lot of people have started to boycott Uber in response to all this news, but, like, this is not the first time there's been some, like, really disturbingly negative coverage about Uber. And, I mean, for me, it's a big thing to digest because I guess you just there's a natural assumption that a company like Uber is just good all the way through because they have this great product and this great service that's like amazing. And, they've pulled in, they've gotten like, I mean, one of the funniest parts about this is that the Ben Smith story came out and then Michael Wolff wrote a response in USA Today where he was like, I took Ben Smith as my guest. He is a hack journalist and a sloppy blogger, and I wish I'd never done that. And Uber is awesome and all these things.
Yeah.
I mean, but like, none of it makes Uber look good. But like, first of all, do you think the little guy, some random person switching to Lyft from Uber is like the right thing to do? And are you inclined personally to like trust Uber from the get-go? Because I remember, just my assumption is always Uber is good, and I've heard all kinds of terrible things about that, and there have been stories about sexual assault and how it's much harder to handle that with Uber because there's no, unlike a taxi, there's no identification, there's no one to call after that or something.
Well, it's interesting this is coming up because I actually have been trying to take Lyft instead of Uber for kind of a long time before this. Partly because over the summer Lyft was really, really cheap. They had a deal where basically you could take a Lyft from anywhere in DC to anywhere in DC for less than $10 or something ridiculous like that. It was I just realized that Lyft was much, much less expensive. And then there have been a number of negative stories about Uber that have come out, including that Uber did some shady things to try to get Lyft drivers to work for them, to try to steal business secrets from Lyft. All of that sort of raises my eyebrows. But then on top of that, I think it's good for there to be a number of ride-sharing companies, and I think Uber will be a better product if they have a competitor that's vibrant and that's aggressive. And Lyft is currently the only show in town as far as being an effective competitor with Uber. So I've been focusing on taking Lyft for a while. I have both apps on my phone. If I need a car to go somewhere, I first look at Lyft. If there's a Lyft car within 5 minutes, I take Lyft. If there's not a Lyft car, then I'll take Uber. So I'm not going to boycott Uber. The boycott instinct I find really annoying, especially given that one guy made an offhanded comment, regardless of how repugnant and absurd that comment was. I don't have the energy, and I'm like, it's bad. I don't think it's boycott bad, but I do think I do hope that this results in people looking at Lyft and checking it out because I've only had good experiences with it.
I mean, this is one of the things, from what little I understand about the tech industry and sort of the current state of innovation in the country, it's that this is one of the areas where you have these rapidly growing companies, and they don't, along the way, establish really key things like, I don't know, an HR department that's in charge of telling their employees you can't have a meeting in a strip club, or like I'm pulling from comments Roos made in a previous episode, or stuff like that. And I get the sense that this is one of those things. The thing is, I don't think Uber's going to go anytime soon in any real big sense. They're getting super powerful, and one of the big things was like David Plouffe joining Uber, and releasing a statement saying we're going to fight the taxi cab unions, and they're like, and that's crazy to me. That's crazy that a top advisor to President Obama is now saying we're going to go after this union and we're going to just crush them. And not even like, there was no like finesse about it, or there was no subtlety. It was just like, we're going to strangle them. Like, that's crazy, yo.
That is wild.
Just like, that blows my
amazing.
mind.
No, it really is. And the reason Uber is going to be fine is that it's a really good product.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done an enormous amount of research on the sexual assault issue with cabs versus with rideshare apps like Uber. Anecdotally, I see articles floating around saying women are less likely to be sexually assaulted if they take an Uber than if they take a cab.
Really? Well,
I've never been sexually assaulted in a cab or an Uber, so that's not something I can speak to. I think the numbers lean to the side of Ubers, statistically speaking, being safer than cabs, but there's probably so few Uber rides compared to cab rides. I don't know if it's a statistically significant sample. I just don't know the answer to that. I do know that I have had, I think, more bad experiences with cab drivers than I've had with Ubers. I rode a cab with a friend who's African American once, and the cab driver was very racist and used the N-word and just said things that were really repugnant. And it was intimidating and frightening. And I remember just being like, I cannot believe this is happening. That's never happened to me with an Uber or a Lyft driver. But again, my experience isn't really a statistically significant sample. So I don't want to hedge too much there. I really can't say. The reasons I prefer Lyft to Uber and the reasons I prefer Lyft and Uber to taxi cabs are not because of safety issues or because of verbal harassment issues. It's more because Uber's corporate culture kind of gives me the cold pricklies, and because I think Lyft is cheaper, and because I want there to be a viable competitor to Uber in sort of the app ride-sharing market. So I have good experiences with Lyft. I recommend it to people. I think it's a good product. I think it's basically as good as Uber. There's not a significant difference.
It's just a mustache on the front.
Yeah, exactly. You know, cute, adorable.
I mean, yeah, you know, I think I remember also there was something that came out a little while ago that was like, Uber is a preferred car service of politicians or something like that. Do you remember that? There was
interesting.
Yeah, I can look that up. I think like you can't roll up to the Capitol, I guess, in like a car
in
with
like
a
pink mustache car.
I mean, some guy, I could see Alan Grayson doing that and very proudly being like, you know, Lyft guys, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I only ever took UberX though. I don't take regular Uber because UberX is basically the same product except the cars are not as fancy and it costs less.
I mean,
so I take Uber. If I need a correction here, I only take UberX. I never take Uber non-X. If that makes sense.
Uber Pro, I guess.
Yeah,
I guess
Uber,
I don't know.
Uber fancy. Uber 1%. Uber
1.
Congressman.
God. That's
my thoughts on Uber. What do you think? Are you going to boycott Uber? You going to switch to Lyft?
I'm with Kimes' tweet. I am outraged. Just not enough to change any of my habits.
Just engulfed with rage, engulfed with anger.
No, I actually do. I actually am signed up for Lyft. I am trying as much as possible to. I think I will. I guess. I don't know. I don't know. I think the attention is deserved, and TPM has hit on some of this Uber stuff. We've been pretty aggressive in the last 24 hours on this. I think the attention is all warranted. I think it's really important because Uber is one of these. I mean, it's one of these few companies that. I mean, it's one of these companies that is growing rapidly and is like a really big sort of source of pride in the country right now. I just don't know. I just don't think it'll be slowed down at all. And I know that like for every bad story about like Uber drivers, they react really quickly and they try and like sharpen their practices or do X or get rid of like the shady attempt to steal drivers. Like they make sure that they're not ordering a bunch of lifts on the same day to the same location to clog up service or something like that.
Yeah. Stuff like that is what just makes me like, come on. Like, yeah, Uber trying to use some sort of magical computer dark magic to screw with Lyft. That's just like, please.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it's absurd. So hopefully this is a wake-up call to Uber. I'm not interested.
I think it is. I think the coverage has been bad for if like political reporters, not just business types, are talking about this a lot and leading their podcasts or like leading our website or that stuff. I think it's gonna. I think
bad.
that's It's not good.
It's not good. So
we got to move
honestly,
on.
But to be very, very honest, what bothers me much more about Uber is the corporate culture stuff and them trying to screw Lyft over. That bothers me.
So they're too establishment for you? Is that it? I want you to elaborate a little bit on corporate culture here.
So what people are obviously very bothered with Uber that it threatened that one of the people in a private conversation suggested that Uber might try to target journalists who report negative stories about it. That merits anger. That merits frustration. That merits a muscular response on the part of the pro-journalism community. However, what bothers me most about Uber, I would say even more so than this journalist targeting, which also bothers me a lot, but what primarily bothers me about Uber is the business tactics that, according to the stories that have merited targeting, are really indefensible and I would say immoral. I would say it's wrong to try to clog up a competitor's app so that it's harder, so that they can't compete with you.
What baffles me is like, why do you need to do this, Uber? Like, I just feel like
seriously.
I just feel like they're so dominant in their market right now. Why not rest on your laurels a bit?
Why not be a good guy?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just have to depend on benevolence in politics.
And the other thing is, we're talking about the startup market, if that's a phrase people use. We're talking about sort of new transportation world. Even if Uber managed to pull out all the stops and do its black magic and destroy Lyft, it would have another competitor in a couple months, because this is a business climate where it's very, very easy for people to just sort of start new models very quickly.
Yeah.
So this idea that the best way to beat competition is by sabotaging them, like, that's not a good business strategy. I don't think that's a way to be a profitable, effective business organization.
I guess not. I don't know.
Maybe I'm being starry-eyed here. Maybe I have a too high an opinion of the way the free market works.
I feel like I think every major successful company will always get some bad press. Will always get some story about how like there's something going on just because they become the galactic empire, and that's just what happens. But
I think new businesses that do things like this get bad press. They merit the bad press. Hopefully they mend their ways, and we can all use the really delightful Uber product without feeling like we're complicit in journalist targeting and app sabotage. That's my hope. That's my dream.
We got to go on to our next topic. One thing that I'm really excited about, actually, we got to switch to politics here a little bit. But this is from one of your Twitter followers who suggested we go back to Texas here for a little bit and talk about why did women in Texas overwhelmingly vote for Greg Abbott, which is by @News of History.
Can we do a quick question we got before that, though, which is our dear friend Dave Weigel suggested we talk about ethics in gaming journalism. Can I have a 30 seconds on this?
No, you can have a lot on this.
I have nothing intelligent to say about ethics in gaming journalism.
I have nothing to
say, Dave. Dave is a good pal. Unfortunately, nothing to contribute on this front. Thank you for the suggestion, though. Lots of intelligent people on the internet have written really intelligent, incisive things about Gamergate. I've read basically everything Gawker has written. I think it's fascinating. However, Gamergate seems like I have a finite amount of time on Spaceship Earth, and I really don't want Gamergate to suck up
My understanding is that
any of
Gamergate
it
has
at all.
left the think piece uh, era of its evolution, and now it's in the you know the contrarian think piece moment where there are all these things like why all the coverage on Gamergate is wrong or all that stuff. So there's
Yeah,
not much more we can say on that one.
not my beat, Dave. Thank you for the kind suggestion.
So I'm
All
actually
right.
so
On to the next
Texas.
thing. Catherine at Muse of History. This is a great question. And I think this is also sort of a good time to do a retrospective on the Texas gubernatorial race. Catherine asks, why did women in Texas overwhelmingly vote for Greg Abbott? Great question. What's your short answer, Daniel?
I mean, my short answer is kind of what Republicans all want. They love they love the story of Wendy Davis and Greg Abbott. Which is that Davis was never able to escape the thing that elevated her to national prominence, which is this filibuster of the Texas abortion law, and she became abortion Barbie, which is a disgusting phrase in my opinion. And you know, she didn't even. I mean, the thing is that abortion is not. It's different from the contraception issue that Democrats thought would be so effective this last cycle, in that it's not even meant to like really energize women a lot and sort of like juxtapose them against some movement of male oppressors. There are some women who are just pro-life and just feel like abortion is wrong and immoral. And I think Davis never really escaped that.
There are a lot of women who are pro-life.
Davis, from very early on, I think, after her gubernatorial campaign started, she really tried to say, I want my campaign to be beyond this filibuster. She really wanted to talk about education a lot, which unfortunately is actually kind of a bad topic in this climate because it's not sexy. It is at every level incredibly complicated and hard.
Yeah.
And if you think healthcare in this country is bleak, try fixing education in this country, okay? That's a whole mess of something else. And
another can of worms, as they maybe say in Texas. Maybe they say that.
I guess. I don't know.
So can my answer to this question, if I can jump in,
please.
The question is, why did women in Texas overwhelmingly vote for Greg Abbott? Important caveat is that Greg Abbott won women because he won white women overwhelmingly. Hispanic women and African American women voted for Wendy Davis. So I think when we talk about this, it's important to see that the divide is not so much along gender lines as it is along racial lines. Abbott had a lot of room has a lot of room to grow in outreach to Hispanic and African American women. And this is something that nationwide we see with Republicans. When we talk about the way women vote, we often say, well, women might vote for Democrats more than men. But those numbers and those disparities are even more pronounced when we look at the racial differences. And this point has been made by people who have done a much more in-depth job looking at the data than I have. Another important thing to bear in mind when we talk about how women vote, a general principle is that women are not a monolith. Women are half of the population, and women's views on what public policy solutions are best for them and what will make their lives better are incredibly disparate and have enormous variation. There is not a female voting bloc. And I think it's more helpful to look at women as smaller sectors, right? To look at smaller sectors of women within this voting bloc. Things that we know white women are more likely to vote Republican than women of color. We also know married women are more likely to vote for Republicans. I've seen data going around that white women who don't have college degrees are more likely to vote Republican. Maybe I couldn't find a source for that data, so maybe I shouldn't float it. But I think but single women, young women who are not married tend to be much more likely to vote Democrat. So I think it's important to bear all those caveats in mind when we talk about why women overwhelmingly voted for Greg Abbott. Texas is a red state, and I think it's a really good question for Catherine to bring up. Texas is a red state. It's Republican, and red states have Republican women, and I think there's with the Democratic Party's War on Women talking point, there's kind of been an effort to sort of erase conservative women from the national political conversation. Anytime conservative women run for public office, I think it's fair to say they face extra scrutiny. They face being compared to Sarah Palin. Feminist social critics seem slightly less energetic to defend conservative women when they face sexist attacks than they are to defend progressive women. And there are more Democratic women in Congress than there are Republican women. So we see those Democratic women more. That's not a criticism of reality. That's just a statement of fact. But the bottom line is, if you only read New York and DC-based media, you might start to think that all women are Democrats. And that's absolutely not the case whatsoever. And Texas is probably Exhibit
100%
A.
of the new incoming senators, female senators for the 114th Congress are all Republican women.
The freshman senators for 114th Congress are all Republican women?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Wow.
What do you mean you didn't know that? They're like...
I hadn't thought about that. Wow.
Well, I mean, the only Democrat coming in is Gary Peters. So everyone else, and there we have Shelley Moore Capito.
Yep. In West Virginia. We have Joni Ernst in Iowa.
We have Joni Ernst. That might be it.
I'm going to feel really dopey if I'm missing one.
We're going to feel bad. Too. Well, you know.
I think those are them. We have a number of incoming Republican
100%.
women in the House.
Right.
We have the first African-American Republican woman, Mia Love, from Utah. Right. We have the youngest member of the House, Elise Stefanik, from New York. Yeah,
who's very under the radar, but she's the star on the right now.
Especially the star in Bush world.
Yeah.
Conservative, I feel like Republicans, people in the Bush circles really, really like Elise Stefanik.
Yeah, and I think we're going to hear a lot more about her later. Maybe, I don't know. It's always hard to tell with rising star House candidates and House Republicans because sometimes they really make a name for themselves and other times, like Kristi Noem, they sort of fall into anonymity a little bit. Or Renee Elmers also was going to be this big force and she wasn't so much and she had a primary challenger, which made her sweat for a second. So,
I think Barbara Comstock is someone to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Barbara Comstock.
Barbara, if only because there's so many people saying you should keep an eye on her.
I guess.
She won an increasingly purple Northern Virginia district. Actually, the district my parents live in. Barbara Comstock is now the congresswoman of my childhood home. And she's extremely well connected. She's been involved in DC Republican circles since the 90s at least. And I think I'll be surprised if she doesn't ascend very rapidly. She's an amazing fundraiser. I think she raised $1 million for her House of Delegates race. That's just an inordinate amount of money to raise for a state house race. Just jaw dropping.
So we have those three in there. I want to.
So anyway, thank you for asking this question, Catherine, because it's really important to talk about. And I learned there are no incoming female Democratic senators, which is an interesting fact.
Do you have one more you want to hit on, or do you want to go back to one from my Twitter responses on this?
Well, Ben Jacobs says we should talk about him.
Okay.
Ben Jacobs is
if we're doing the minor ones. Yeah.
The only thing I have to say about Ben Jacobs is he's the worst. Just kidding. He's not actually the worst. He is very well sourced among Iowa Democratic circles, and he's a good pal. And congratulations, Ben Jacobs. I hope you're happy we talked about you. On to the next topic.
The other thing, I'm also...
Matt DeLuca suggested we talk about Uber, so shout out to Matt DeLuca. Thank you for the suggestion. We've talked about it. Thumbs up. Good call. I hope you enjoyed our scintillating discussion.
David Seawright, who's at David Seawright, said I'm supposed to ask about my token Republican drinking buddy. I only have one drinking buddy, and he knows it, and that's David Seawright, and we snob out on beer. So,
only one drinking buddy, period?
Yeah, I only have one drinking buddy. My wallet can't afford more than that, Betsy. I just, sometimes I can just do it once. Yeah, but
I have drinking water buddies, my roommates.
Seawright, actually, I do want to bring up one thing, and Seawright and I were talking about John Kasich, and I've heard some rumblings about him today. I was at a sort of CAP event for most of the day today, and there was some talk about him. what do you think about Ohio Governor Kasich and possibly
Okay,
2016?
what I think about Ohio Governor Kasich, I hope I don't really regret saying this in a while, but I don't understand why people are talking about him as a potential 2016 contender.
Yep.
He has zero national name ID.
That's it.
Nobody knows who he is. The only reason he won by such an enormous margin is because he was running against just a terrible, embarrassing Democratic challenger, and he accepted the Medicaid expansion, which is a poison pill for the conservative base. And when he accepted the Medicaid expansion, he said it was because when he dies and goes to the pearly gates, Jesus or St. Peter or someone isn't going to ask him about this. They're going to ask him about the equivalent of the Medicaid expansion, which is particularly repulsive to the conservative base because you're invoking Jesus and Christianity to defend Obamacare. And that just makes people's eyeballs melt out of their skulls. If you think conservatives are angry about Chris Christie's potential presidential bid, you ain't seen nothing yet.
So you think there'd be a big
way more pissed about Kasich,
right?
Without a doubt.
Okay,
He's an old white guy from the Midwest.
Hey, old white guys sometimes get the presidential nominations. And I think we're going to see a lot more old white guys running for president.
Old white guys in my life.
That's my bold prediction right there.
What's your bold prediction?
Old white guys are going to keep running for president. And be taken very seriously. So
thank you for raising this question, David Z. Right?
Yeah. So there are two things that are interesting to me about Kasich. One is, and I think we should touch on this because we haven't touched on this.
If I saw John Kasich in the grocery store, I'm not even sure I would recognize him.
No, me neither. And
which makes me feel really bad. I'm just not sure I would.
So there are two things actually. There's Kasich and a guy named Rick Snyder from Michigan, where we both went to college, and both are pretty popular in Republican circles, but they're both kind of regional and they're kind of stuck in that.
And Rick Snyder isn't even that popular.
Yeah, okay. I think popular was, but I've seen they're excited about among their followers are very excited about them. Snyder was just named like a poll to watch by Governing Magazine, I think 2 days ago or yesterday. So I don't know, but like both of these guys strike me as like one of their biggest problems is name recognition. And we're at a point in the cycle where, in the 2016 cycle, where you're kind of already locked in. And if you don't have prominent name recognition, you're not going to go anywhere. Like Rob Portman, senator from Ohio, too, is currently throwing out the idea of running for president. But I just think he, as formidable a candidate as I think he would be, and I think he'd be actually a really strong candidate, I don't think he has the name recognition to compete with guys like Chris Christie or something.
Without a doubt.
If you want to run for president, you got to start getting that name recognition up 2-3 years in advance. And someone like Kasich or someone else, not so much. Do you honestly think, though, that Medicaid expansion would hurt a Republican candidate in both the general election and the primary, or just like a messy primary like this one?
Probably not in the general election, but absolutely in the primary. In the primary, it would wreck him.
I guess this is what insulates Republican candidates who are senators. They don't have to be questioned on Medicaid expansion. They've had plenty of opportunities to vote against Obamacare, so they can just do that.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Oh, you're right. Next question.
We got one more that I thought that was interesting.
Can I hop in with one from my feed?
Yeah, go ahead.
I have, and I'll just give a short answer to this because it's kind of speculative and I don't know that I can go into detail and say anything super insightful. But I have a question from a Twitter follower who goes by Fox News Fan at FNC Ladies Rule. And this Twitter follower says, how come Clinton never got the all caps rape, sexual assault fallout like Cosby is getting now? That is a very difficult question, and I'm not the person to answer that. However, I can say one thing, and that is that social media has played a huge deal in the fallout for Bill Cosby. That was not involved when some of the more scandalous allegations about President Clinton were going around. I think the fact that social media gives people the ability to call out journalists or ask journalists why they aren't covering something means that these kind of allegations, like the allegations that Bill Cosby is facing, have much more legs. and are much more likely to become national news stories than they would be in the pre-social media world. So I really think that's the big, big, impossible to overstate difference here.
Can we backtrack a little bit on the Cosby events?
Sure.
Actually, I mean, so he was in an NPR interview, correct? And he was asked about sort of rape allegations a while ago, and his response was just to shake his head. And it was an audio interview, right? So the narrator had to say, "You're shaking your head and not responding, so I'm going to take that as a refusal to respond." And since then, there's been fallout. There's been cancellations of projects that Cosby has been on, other stuff. Am I up to speed on that?
Yeah.
You know, I guess this is one of the positive sort of features of news over the internet. Word travels fast, I guess.
Without a doubt.
I have nothing else to.
I have nothing else to contribute on that front.
I've got nothing else to offer.
But I think without a doubt, I don't think the Cosby implosion happens without social media, because these allegations surfaced years ago, before Twitter had such a huge role to play in how journalists gather news. You know, these Cosby allegations, I think, go back to 2006, maybe even earlier, when women went public with these allegations, and social media wasn't a factor, and the stories just kind of fizzled. So I think, as a reporter who gets angry tweets from time to time, and I welcome that, I can say without a doubt that communication from people who don't live in DC journalism world and don't write for national publications absolutely impacts the way I think about what stories I need to cover and how I need to do coverage.
It's insane how Facebook and Twitter really dominate which stories move quickly and
without a doubt,
which stories catch fire and which ones don't, or don't for a while. I don't really know. Do you have one more question to ask? Because I got a few topics that haven't been asked yet that I'd love to go over.
Let me just finish going through my feed very rapidly. Alex Seitzwald says the Partridge Family were neither partridges nor a family. Discuss. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea, Alex. I don't know what you're talking about.
Except that it's a good tie-in to another Twitter question from Christian Schneider CM, who is a columnist in Wisconsin, who wants me to talk about gingers in Congress. So there's a nice segue between
gingers in Congress. Let's talk about the new.
It's a great question.
I love the ginger
and
caucus.
It really segues nicely from Seitzwald bringing up the Partridge Family, because the Partridge Family were all gingers, right?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay,
it was before my time.
Are you familiar with the proportion of Congress that are gingers? Because I know we have a new ginger.
I actually am.
Okay,
I am, because I did some great wall-to-wall congressional ginger representation coverage on election night that I'm really proud
of. Well, please. I mean, my understanding is just that we have a new ginger coming into the U.S. Senate who won a hard-fought primary, Congressman Jim Lankford of Oklahoma. And he's replacing Tom Coburn. But other than that, I can't think of many
So I interviewed Lankford for a Q&A for the Washington Examiner a couple months ago, and I asked him about this.
Okay.
I asked him, I forget what specifically. Oh, it was because Breitbart had this ginger jihadi story. So I had gingers on my mind. I did not ask him for his take on the ginger jihadi story, but I did ask him about, a redhead representation on the Hill. And he said that when he was in Congress, him and Joe Kennedy, Massachusetts Democrat, were the only two redheads in the House. And they were a caucus of two. But then now that he's gone to the Senate, apparently Joe Kennedy is the only redhead in the House of Representatives, unless there's an incoming freshman who's a redhead.
Shame. That's not
which
the
is
face
possible,
of America.
which I can't think of. It's
the
possible, but I can't think of
founders did not shape our government to have such disproportionate non-gingers. So what can we take from...
It's disproportionate in the House. However, in the Senate, Heidi Heitkamp is a ginger. Oh, yeah. She's from North Dakota, and James Lankford. So that is 2% of the Senate, right? 2% of the Senate is gingers. Let me see if I can figure out what percent of Americans are gingers.
So Heitkamp is part of the Democratic Nonpartisan League, which is she's a Democrat.
Yeah.
Betsy, from your expertise on the ginger beat, is there any hope of any bipartisanship or, backroom chattering through the ginger bridge?
I think it's possible. I mean, it sounds like Lankford and Joe Kennedy had sort of a friendly back and forth about it. You probably aren't
No,
going
I
to find two
mean,
members that are more ideologically at odds.
Heitkamp isn't the most liberal. Maybe they could, I don't know,
No, Heitkamp is super conservative.
right.
Heitkamp is not liberal at all.
You never know. A lot of things.
Heitkamp is basically Mary Landrieu from the Frozen
Well, she's
North.
going to be Mary Landrieu soon because it looks like Landrieu's going to be gone. Oh.
Probably.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm Googling what percent of Americans are gingers. Nothing is immediately coming up. I'm searching redheads instead. Okay, apparently 4% of the world population are redheads. I can't, scrolling through the first page of Google, I'm obviously working really hard on this. I don't see what percent of Americans are. So, I don't know.
Bummer.
I think it's safe to guess that gingers are underrepresented in the House.
Is there
possibly correctly represented in the Senate?
Probably, maybe. I don't know. I mean, who knows? That
Yeah.
is one new thing. That is one new fact about our new 114th Congress that I think
If
is
there
not.
are incoming freshmen who are gingers, though, I will update on our next episode. I'll issue a correction.
Okay.
Also, on election night, I was at Scott Walker's victory party in Wisconsin, and Anna Marie Cox, who's a Daily Beast contributor, was there, and she is a ginger. And I asked her what she thought, as a member of the ginger community, about ginger's underrepresentation. And what she told me, on the record, that I included in our live blog, was that gingers are less likely to be in Congress because people can tell when we're lying.
Oh, I see. I see.
I have nothing to add, but
well, we know they're honest then, and we need more honest politicians, Betsy.
no kidding. It would be great if we had politicians who we could tell.
Yeah, I think there's a total opening platform for them. Okay, one thing I do want to hit on,
Daniel.
What?
Good point.
We should quit. We should open up Betsy and Woodruff Consulting, or Woodruff and Strauss Consulting, and Ginger Pack. I'm almost positive that there is a Ginger Pack out there. Someone has surely registered that.
I'm going to Google it.
There you go. I do want to move to a serious thing that did happen in the last week. Definitely since last time we had a Woodruff and Strauss episode of any form, which was Elizabeth Warren was named a new position was created for Elizabeth Warren in Democratic leadership. She's supposed to act as sort of a liberal liaison, a term that she reportedly doesn't like, for the Democratic Policy Communications Committee, or the DPC.
Democratic Senate for Senate Democrats.
Yeah, for Senate Democrats. And her job is apparently it's the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee under Chuck Schumer, who runs that committee. And her job is basically to act as sort of the representative of the liberal wing of the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. This actually reminded me of Ted Cruz being named very early on as a vice chairman of the NRSC. Everyone knew Cruz going in would be conservative, and I think this was an attempt to make sure he was involved. It later sort of became seen, I think,
make him a team player. Yeah,
to sort of keep him under, to muzzle him a little bit or keep him under control, and that really didn't happen. The thing about that is that NRSC chairman and vice chairman are not supposed to get involved in primaries, and the idea was that as a vice chairman, Cruz wouldn't be out endorsing candidates challenging incumbent Republicans in primaries. Yeah. Technically that happened. There was a little nodding, a little winking, especially near the end. That was kind of... He endorsed T.W. Shannon, right? Yeah, he endorsed him,
in the primary.
You're right. He did near the end. Well, that didn't happen. So that's what this reminded me of. I don't think Warren has been a thorn in the paw of Senate Democrats or the Democratic Party on her signature issue, which is the economy. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of soul searching right now, or there's not a lot, but there's some soul searching among the left, given this shellacking in the last election about how they should handle the economy and if they need to recalibrate their prescription to the country's economic problems right now.
Yeah.
and sort of this seems to coincide with Warren's sort of movement. So I guess you could read that as being as the party taking or adopting Warren's playbook more and like fight Wall Street. But Betsy, I gotta be honest, like I don't see that happening, because her job is sort of as an advisor under a committee that is run by Chuck Schumer, who's very close to Wall Street and very powerful anyway.
Yeah.
I don't
agree.
see it.
I agree. And the other reason it's going to be hard is that hiring Elizabeth Warren to handle your communications is an interesting choice, given that she basically never talks to reporters on Capitol Hill.
Nope, never.
Never. For people who don't have experience reporting on Capitol Hill, I hope there are people who watch Blogging Heads outside of the Capitol Hill press corps. That made me really happy. As Capitol Hill reporters, one thing that we do is stake out votes and run after members and ask them questions about things that we're working on. And the vast majority of senators are happy to talk to reporters. You know,
they put up with us.
I would say the majority. You flag them, you say, hey, I had a quick question. I'm wondering what you think about the future of sentencing reform, or what do you think about amnesty, or what do you think about this, or how are you thinking about voting on this? And I have overwhelmingly good experiences with these folks, being polite and friendly and either answering or saying, I'm sorry, I can't talk about that, talk to my staff, or pretending to talk on the phone. Elizabeth Warren is one of a small handful of senators that just won't talk to you. Like tunnel vision, like ignoring, like hiding behind other senators, like, shuffling down the hallway, trying to sprint. Senator Pryor from Arkansas did the same thing before his election, where he just I did a piece on this.
Seems it didn't turn out very well for Pryor, did it? Because
didn't work out so hot.
Badly.
Anyway, it's just seems. We'll see how she does at her new gig. It seems a little ironic to me that you'd put somebody in charge of communications who's scared of harmless, easy hallway interviews.
Are we always
with Capitol Hill
harmless
reporters.
though? I feel like
maybe scared is the wrong word to use. Maybe I shouldn't say scared. Maybe strategically avoids. But it's like, oh, for goodness sakes, come on. It's not that hard.
Someone pointed out to me today that, one reporter's grumbling about lack of access is a staffer's discipline and on message here. And I guess that's what Warren is doing.
Mm-hmm.
She's very, very well tailored, and she says the same thing a lot, which is we need to fight Wall Street. We need to
stand up for the middle class.
Stand up for the middle class and the little guy. It's hard to tell what this move will be seen as or something. I think it will. I don't think Elizabeth Warren is running for president, personally.
I don't see any reason to think she would be running for president.
There's a lot of movement, and people like to, read out any slight wink or nod as a sign that she's ready to challenge Hillary in the primaries. But
sure thing.
This would be an easier transition if Hillary got the nomination for everyone in the party to move behind her. So,
honestly, Warren joining leadership seems like a very defensive move for Senate Democrats to make. It seems like they were like, oh, rats. We need to do something really fast. Quick. What can we do? I don't know. Make up something for Warren. Like, I'm not saying that's what happened. I have no inside track. I don't have any reason to think that's what happened, but that's what it looks like. And I don't know.
I mean, we in talking about this episode, you did highlight a Huffington Post story on Warren, which said that basically there were a lot of Democrats who didn't see this coming by a long shot.
Jennifer Bendery at Huffington Post had a great story where she just asked a bunch of Senate Democrats, what did you think? And they were like, oh, we had no idea. Oh, we didn't know. Oh, this was a big surprise. And they didn't, obviously, individual quotes, you can't necessarily intuit what people's opinions are or what their emotions are, but it didn't sound super excited. It was a lot of people saying, oh, wow, I had no clue. And not a lot of people saying, yes.
Thank God. Betsy, we should have done this before the election.
Finally, we're standing up for the middle class.
The middle class. That's what we should do.
I want to know who the anti-middle class senators are.
I would love to know who the senators like, yo, F the middle class, all right? No.
Screw the middle
suckling
class.
Off America's
college students.
The poor and the rich. That's what we need to deal with. All right? Middle class is fine. I want those guys.
The redheads.
The redheads.
The Senate redheads are going to be like, guess what? We actually don't care about them.
This is what the bipartisan ginger caucus should do. Yes. Listen, I mean, on the one hand, I think you should be cautious and be like, it's very hard to keep something like that under wraps. There are a lot of leaks all the time. But on the other hand, like the way the response came, which was like there was no hint on this at all, like it is strange. And it was moved quickly. There wasn't, my understanding and the reporting I've seen on the actual vote on this was that there was not a lot of time to vote on this or for people in the caucus meeting to be like, well, wait, let's slow down. Let's talk about this for a second.
There wasn't really debate.
Right. There was just like...
It sounds like nobody got to be like, maybe we should pick somebody who talks to reporters to be our liaison. Sounds like nobody said that.
Well, in their defense, Al Franken is very on message and he doesn't talk to reporters a lot and he won re-election.
Ever. I think Franken only talks to Minnesota press.
Yeah.
I've tried to talk to him before here.
That's his thing.
Vitter from Louisiana also doesn't do hallway interviews, but he told me he didn't do hallway interviews. I tried to grab him after a vote, and he was like, I don't do hallway interviews. Call my comms guy. Which I appreciate him at least saying that. It's annoying he doesn't do hallway interviews because I don't want to call his comms guy. It's pain. But at least he had the decency to say, I'm not going to talk to you because it's my policy and not because I personally dislike you. If you're not going to do hallway interviews, at least say I'm not going to do hallway interviews.
So why do you think...
Just to be polite.
Do you think Warren's lack of access is a message thing?
I'm sorry?
Do you think Warren's lack of access is a message thing? To stay on message, to, sort of...
I mean, a good way to stay on message is never, ever, ever to say anything.
I guess. I just feel like, listen...
You never talk out loud, you'll never say a gap.
Right. I feel like the political reporting climate in DC is tough and it's different, but there is a way to harness it. And if you're a lawmaker, you pick your favorite outlets, you find the reporters who you know, and there are reporters out there, Betsy, who give favorable coverage to certain groups or people.
I don't know. Neither of us.
Yeah. I'm not talking about you, but there are reporters out there who are the go-to voices for lawmakers because they know exactly how they're going to be portrayed. And, these reporters are really successful. They're far more successful than me. And
that's also why it's important that there's a big number of media outlets and that we have a diverse press corps.
Mm-hmm. But I just feel like you can learn all those things, and that's ultimately more useful than being cordoned off.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I think is that, my guess would be the more interviews a senator or member or representative does, the better they get at talking to press, right? The better they get at articulating their ideas in a way that's clear and succinct, or in a way that is obfuscated and spun. But regardless, I would think the more interviews you do, the better you get at doing interviews. And if you don't do these hallway interviews, you're just missing a whole bunch of opportunities to get really good practice. And that means, I would guess, that when you're on the campaign trail and you can't not do interviews and local media wants to talk to you, that it's going to be tougher for you to talk to local media. Terry Lynn Land in Michigan got excoriated for not doing more media interviews.
Terry Lynn Land, the
Republican Michigan senatorial candidate who lost fairly badly. She got excoriated. And by all counts, the reason she didn't do more media interviews is because she wasn't good at doing them. Granted, she was Secretary of State, so not in a position where she would have done a ton of these interviews or maybe had a lot of opportunities for practice. But the point stands, and the point is, if you get good at doing interviews, that will benefit you for years and years and years and maybe decades. But if you don't take this practice, then at some point you're going to be on the campaign trail and someone's going to ask you something and you're going to say, I think average income in Arkansas is $200,000. Like Senator Pryor said, or you're going to say any number of dopey things. So
let me ask you one thing on Land also. Terry Lynn Land is one of the Republican Senate candidates that lost, one of the few in a major race this cycle. And there were points in the 2014 cycle where Republicans said that Michigan was in play, and Democrats did sweat. And there was some staff movement on the campaign of now Senator-elect Gary Peters. Which is never a good sign for a campaign. Do you think if some of the other names that had been touted to run for Senate, Mike Rogers, the chairman of the House Intel Committee, or Dave Camp, the top tax writer in the House. If
Mhm.
either of those candidates, or even the libertarian maverick, Justin Amash had won, would they have won that seat?
I think Amash would have had a hard time just because he is very libertarian and
And
there's a lot
I
of
mean, and it's
material for
Detroit,
Democrats
and
to
they
work
love,
against him.
Detroit.
Detroit is not particularly libertarian.
No,
However, I think if Mike Rogers had run, he would have been formidable. Smart guy. He
I
was retiring anyways.
I completely agree. And I think,
That seat should
when
have
I
been competitive.
see Rogers too, I think this guy is just so Michigan all the way through.
Oh yeah,
I
totally.
just like, I just don't. Yeah, I think Republicans missed something on that, and they lost that seat partially because Land was such a weak candidate. This was not a particularly strong campaign on the other side that ran.
Right.
They did a decent
It should have been
job in the
competitive.
end, but there
It
were
should have been
definitely
competitive.
it should have been competitive, and it wasn't. And Democrats
Yeah.
should sigh a breath of
No kidding.
of relief because of Terry Lynn Land.
No kidding. You're right. And I know this is an old saw, so I can't take credit for this amazing wisdom. But obviously candidates matter.
Yeah.
There are seats that Republicans should have won that they lost because they had crappy candidates. There are seats Democrats should have won. Cough, Iowa, cough, that they lost because their candidates were not good. And
there were some missteps on the Braley campaign, you say?
I'm sorry?
There were some missteps on the Braley campaign, you say? Yeah.
Man.
I think we've hit on anyone who's listening to this podcast knows that this Blogging Heads series, our show, knows what happened in Iowa because we've hit on it in every episode.
Talk about it so much. It's so fun to talk about. The thing, and I know we've talked about this before, but part of the reason the Braley gaffes were so bad is they're super easy to explain.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to explain outsourcing. You don't have to explain offshore bank accounts. All you have to do is be like, hey, a guy running for Senate in Iowa made fun of farmers. Or, hey, a guy running for Senate in Iowa threatened to sue his neighbor over chickens.
Well, the chicken neighbor thing was a little overblown. But when something like that
it worked.
Well,
but it worked. Regardless of the merits of these things, it takes 10 seconds. I can fit both of those in 10 seconds. And I have another 20 seconds to craft a television ad.
10-second fact or quasi-fact can either build a campaign or destroy it.
It's true,
and that's one of those things. I want to hit on one last thing, which I think is really interesting to close out, which is Roll Call had a really interesting story about we're already in 2016 mode, not only at the presidential level, but at the federal level. And there's already talk about Harry Reid and his reelection. And Sandoval, the governor of Nevada, has been mentioned as possibly running against Harry Reid. And Sandoval is kind of one of those guys that has been mentioned for everything. He's been mentioned as a possible VP candidate for Mitt Romney, a few other things. John Ralston out there has done some reporting on this and said that Sandoval is, to put it, to be very subtle on here, less than a sure thing on that. Apparently he's not so crazy about it. But an interesting point that I saw was a Roll Call story listing possible campaign managers for Harry Reid's reelection campaign. And they include Sarah Benzing, who actually ran Bruce Braley's Iowa campaign, Preston Elliott, who ran Kay Hagan's campaign, and Ann Caprara, who is a big sort of name in the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. Now, both Benzing and Elliott lost their races, but they have impressive resumes. Benzing, for instance, ran Kirsten Gillibrand's race, and she was up in Massachusetts running Markey's race. And Elliott is this big guy who has done basically everything for the DSCC, and I've talked to other top campaign officials who rave about him. And, say what you will about, the truth is the Hagan team lost, but a lot of operatives I've talked to have said they've run a really good campaign, and it's one of the few races that Democrats lost, but they ran an impressive operation. Mm-hmm. what I found interesting about these guys, these names, besides the fact that they're being named so early, is that having a perfect record or winning a lot doesn't necessarily assure that you're going to go on to the next level. It's sort of an overall thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, on the Republican side, I asked a friend the other day about Mitch McConnell's second campaign manager, Josh Holmes, who ended up running his campaign near the end because his first one left the campaign. Let's leave that for another day. Mm-hmm. And McConnell gave this guy, Josh Holmes, a signed baseball that said, "Congratulations on a perfect game." Holmes' stock is probably going to be super high from now on. I don't know what you've heard. You're better sourced in conservative circles than I am, Betsy. But I assume that Holmes is going to be a candidate for a top-tier presidential race. Maybe Christie. I don't know. Maybe Cruz, although that's kind of different because Cruz is in...
Probably not Cruz.
Yeah, Cruz is in the Tea Party.
Probably not best buddies. I think Holmes would be more likely to show up in Rand Paul world just because...
Really?
Yeah, because McConnell and Senator Paul are close. Mm-hmm. They're friendly. They sort of have a gentleman's agreement not to screw each other over. Rand doesn't surprise McConnell if he disagrees with leadership. McConnell lets Rand Paul's bills get a vote, even if McConnell disagrees with them. McConnell endorsed Rand after McConnell's chosen candidate lost in the primary to Rand back in, I guess, 2010. Rand endorsed McConnell against this Tea Party challenger. Rand is not one of these guys in the Senate like Cruz and Lee who's constantly going after leadership. He's, by all counts, they work together, they get along, they understand each other. It hasn't tarnished any of Rand's conservative credentials. So if I had to guess, I mean, I don't have any information specifically on Josh Holmes. He seems, I don't have any inside information on him. But if I had to guess a presidential campaign he'd end up on, my guess would be Rand Paul just by association.
I think that's a good bet. I don't
know if that's right, but it wouldn't surprise me if that happened.
Mm-hmm. And what does that say about Paul's operation? I mean, how
it says that Paul is savvier than people give him credit for. Mm-hmm. I think. He has to be incredibly savvy because he has so much baggage. And the fact that he has built a functional working relationship with McConnell is a really big deal. The fact that he's been able to do that without really undermining his conservative credentials or the trust that he has from the conservative base, that matters. That's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Okay, Betsy.
Hang on. Can I just skim through my Twitter feed really fast and make sure we aren't missing anything? Okay, Betsy Rothstein at Daily Caller also suggested we talk about Cosby. Check mark, Betsy, from one Betsy to another. Thank you for the suggestion. Sean Pasternak suggested we talk about Fareed Zakaria's plagiarism. To be honest, I haven't followed that story very closely. I don't know that I have anything smart to say about it besides what's already been said. But thank you for the suggestion, Sean. I think we answered all of them. Will Estrada suggested we talk about using Russia's rocket engines to send U.S. satellites into space. Thank you for this kind suggestion. Thank you for the tweet. Well, I have literally no smart things to say about that. I know nothing about rocket engines. I know nothing about U.S. satellites. I know nothing about where the twain meet. I wish I did. I wish I had something smart to say about that. I really, really don't. My apologies.
I got nothing. Sorry, Will. Will, Russian rockets are not... Yeah, thank you for the suggestion. We love your enthusiasm, I guess.
We do.
So I think this is going to be at least...
Robert Caruso suggested we talk about ghostwriting. We'll talk about that another day.
Yeah.
I know this is ghostwriting right now.
I think we're going to do this more. I don't know how much more, but we're definitely going to incorporate this.
This is fun.
Yeah, so followers...
I feel like our Twitter followers are better at coming up with topics than we are, maybe. So
I think that's
thank you, social media, for being particularly social tonight. It's been real.
It has been real. This is Daniel Strauss and Betsy Woodruff signing off. Bye, guys.